Hi, Let's Ride listeners. It's your friend Paul Estrada. If you've gotten any value out of any of the episodes, I'm here to ask you to pause this episode and take a moment to subscribe to the show wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you're a real go-getter, please take a moment to leave a review of the podcast. I'd be indebted to you forever. Thank you for supporting and listening to the show and for going on this journey with us. Pause, subscribe, and let's ride. What's up, everybody? Long time no talk. It's been a while since I've done a solo episode. There's been a lot going on, but just been trying to stay up with the interviews, which takes up a decent amount of time. But in addition to that, we are full on in nesting mode. And for those of you that don't know what nesting mode is, that is when you have a kid on the way. And all of a sudden, those projects around the house that you want to do, but then you don't find the time to get around to it. All that stuff starts to become a priority. We're about to welcome a new member of the family, and full on nesting mode. So, what does that mean for me? Well, it means a lot of caulking. If you guys are familiar with that, that's just taking a tube of, white stuff and just filling in cracks around, various wood, trim, and baseboards, repainting baseboards, painting rooms, moving furniture around, building a lot of furniture. That furniture comes in, it's heavy. They always it's always with the Allen wrench. And, you're just, by the end of the thing, your thumbs are red and torn apart because you've twisted so many dang bolts into place. But, that's what it takes. That's what it takes, I guess, to get the house ready. And, it is nice. It is nice to have something pushing you to want to do those things. Because I do stare at them, right? You can have those projects and you kind of walk past it. And every once in a while you look at it, it's like, I really should find time today or this weekend or next weekend to get this done. And then, inevitably something better, more fun comes up, and then you just kind of pass on that. But, been taking the time, doing all that, and it's going pretty well. I have to say, YouTube is amazing. You can learn a lot of things on YouTube. Although what I will say about YouTube is they make things look a lot easier than it is in reality. Or I'm just not that bright, but I'll watch these videos. I'll do my research. I'll watch 3 videos just to make sure I get all the different angles. I'm not missing any of the details. And, I'm feeling real confident as I'm entering the project. I kick it off, and then you kind of get started. And then there's like one thing that varies slightly from what you saw in the video, and you're just in a world of hurt. You're kind of just trying to figure out, okay, well, this is not part of my YouTube training. This was not at all part of that. And now I've got to, troubleshoot and figure this out. Read the comments. Man, you start reading the comments and all of a sudden people are like, oh, well, they didn't mention this little detail. And so I'm not going to bore you, but the reality is this has been my life the last couple months. I kind of like it, to be honest with you. It's fun. There's something about when you are, somebody that typically is behind a computer screen, typing away, and then actually taking a few moments to do something with your hands and seeing a project kind of come from nothing to completion. That's pretty satisfying. And so I'm gonna lie, I've been complaining about it here for the first couple minutes, but in reality, it has been a lot of fun, and it is coming together. I'm learning a ton, electrical stuff, which I would never touch before. I'm all about it, right? I just did some work on the AC unit, and man, look at me, guys. So it's just, it's been a lot of fun. We're coming to the end here. I think we're about 8 weeks or so away from the new addition to our family. We're excited. Got a little bit more nesting to do. Just picture those. Remember when I was talking to Craig and you got those bald eagles up in Mount Baldy, just kind of nesting, getting the nest ready, getting it all set and ready to go. So it's been fun. I got a couple more weeks in me, and we'll probably a couple more projects that we'll check off the list. But if I'll leave you with this, I think if you've been kind of contemplating wanting to do something, look, it's expensive out there these days, guys. Hiring people to do stuff. And I would say sometimes it's absolutely worth it. They just do stuff real quick. It makes a lot of sense. But if you've got some time and you want to save some money, just, go down the YouTube rabbit hole and good things will happen. That's all I'm going to say on that. All right. Couple other things. Okay. What else has been going on? Just got back. So we did take a pause from the nesting and we went to Spain. I was super excited about that. When I was 20 years old, spent a semester in Spain, specifically Madrid. And the thought there was, I'm going to become proficient at Spanish. I'm going to be a Spanish speaking son of a gun, right? That's how I sold it to my parents anyway. In reality, I am a summer baby. My birthday is in August. And I came to the realization when we were 20 that I was going to be the last of my group of friends to turn 21. Of course, in my mind, that meant, okay, well, I'm going to have all my friends that are going to turn 21, which means they're going to be going out to bars, clubs, having a good time. And I'm going to be, the guy sitting at home while everyone else is having a good time. And that just, in hindsight, it probably would have been cheaper for me to just find a resource and, go the McLovin route and just go get myself a fake ID. For whatever reason, that didn't cross my mind. What crossed my mind was, let me go find a country that allows people to legally drink before 21. So yeah, in hindsight, I guess that wasn't the brightest thing, but it turned out it was a great thing. I went there in, I think it was January of 2004, something like that, 2005 maybe. And I had a great time. I was supposed to be in class 5 days a week, but, things happened, made a lot of friends and, went out and had a good time. And anyways, it became kind of a special place for me. So much so that I really fell in love with the culture, all the different things, the way that they approached life. If there's one thing I'll say about the Spaniards, this is just perception. Maybe it's not true. I don't know, but it just seems like they really take the time to enjoy life and kind of prioritize spending time with friends, family over work. Whereas I feel like here in the US, we are very economically driven and, I'm certainly that way. And so at least again, like for me, it's just nice to go over there. Things move a lot slower. Like if you're starving, do not go to a restaurant because that waiter's not going to come over for like a solid 30 minutes. Then he might pour you some water and say, I'll be back and I'll come get your order. Like a meal is very drawn out. It's going to take at least 2 hours. If you're hungry, especially if you got kids that are hungry, just go to McDonald's. Just get it over with. You're not going to want to go sit down and spend time at a restaurant. But that's kind of part of it, right? It's just take your time. We're not in a rush. Take your time. Enjoy. Another thing that I noticed, I was there last week was, everyone takes their kids to the restaurants. And there's not a lot of devices. I'm guilty of it, right? I mean, kids start acting up and you're just like, I want to enjoy a nice dinner. Here's an iPad. Here's the phone. Sit there and be quiet while I enjoy my meal and have an adult conversation. I didn't see that much over there. Like kids just kind of sit there and they participate in the conversation or they're engaged in some other way. Maybe they're coloring or doing something like that. So again, I don't know. Maybe I'm being kind of critical, but that's how it felt. The shops close in the middle of the day, so people can go home and, rest, relax, take a nap, take a load off, whatever. And then people go back out and they eat dinner at 9, 10. Like, don't try eating dinner at 6, 7 o'clock. Places aren't open. They're going to look at you kind of funny. You just go later and, go to sleep late. You go to sleep at 11, 12 o'clock, maybe later, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, whatever. It's a very different way of life. And it's just a very nice change of pace. And so that was a lot of fun here over the last couple of weeks doing that. A lot of sangria, really good sangria out there. I'm going to have to find a recipe for that. And that was kind of Spain. It was awesome to be able to take my 2 youngest boys there and just kind of get them into the culture a little bit, a different culture. By the end, they were kind of starting to speak a little bit of Spanish and asking, hey, how do you say this word in Spanish? And I kind of surprised myself too, to be honest with you. I'm talking to my father-in-law and throwing out all kinds of words, vocab words that, I can't put full sentences together per se, but I was throwing it out there. And then, they have a very unique accent too. It's like, they got a very to what they got going on. So it's like, I'm going to the plaza. I'm going to go to the plaza. And it's just fun. It's just fun to get out of your element, enjoy a little time. And so that was our little break from nesting. Last thing I'm going to say on nesting, I promise, because I haven't said the word nesting so many times in such a short period ever in my life. I go back and we've talked about these on some of the episodes, but it was about involving, the boys in these things, right? Not necessarily, I'm not going to have them, messing with some electrical, right? But, that's like the old age-old thing of, the dad's working on something and the son holds the flashlight. Hey, son, hold the flashlight. Move it right here. Give me this angle. Hey, hold it. You're not holding it right. And, but just getting him exposure to kind of just seeing these things, like seeing that it's not some crazy, ridiculous thing, just like some sort of level of comfort in getting them to do that. And, one thing that really stood out to me was we were cutting some drywall and he was helping me measure things. Now, look, everything takes like 3 or 4 times longer when they're involved. But if I've got the time, as frustrating as it is, I just see a lot of value in giving him the time to measure the thing out, take the pencil, do the whole thing, right? And so we've been doing that. And yeah, just a really unique moment was we were marking some drywall and he had a pencil and, he takes the pencil and he puts it behind his ear, when he's not using it. And it's probably no big deal, right? I think probably that's what most people do. It makes a lot of sense, right? It's easily accessible. You just, lift the hand up, you just grab that pencil, boom, it's right there. You don't lose it. You don't end up, putting it somewhere it's not supposed to be. It's just boom, right in the ear. And that just reminded me a lot of my grandpa, Alex. He was just, that's what he did. He was a handyman. He owned a bunch of properties and he's just always working on those things, right? And at his house too, same thing. But he always had that pencil in the back of his ear. And so as soon as I saw that, I immediately took a picture of that. And just good reminder, he's been gone for, a little over a year now. And so it's always nice when I get those little reminders about him. And just also a reminder, like I saw that stuff growing up, saw him doing that, saw my dad doing stuff like that. And so it's kind of nice to, be passing those things along. And like I said, I'm not going to be building a house anytime soon, but your boy knows how to get around a screwdriver and a pair of pliers every once in a while. So it's been a lot of fun. Been thinking a lot about just, people's professional journeys. That's something that I'm always thinking about. I'm kind of crazy to think about, but coming up on hopefully the halfway point of being a professional in the work environment, right? Since coming out of school. And if the savings, the investments and everything kind of works out, like I should be on the backside of working, which is kind of, before retirement, which is kind of crazy to think about. Because it doesn't seem that long ago that I was interning at a company and green and not knowing much about anything. And fast forward, and as young as I like to think I am in my mind, we've got these interns on campus and, I'm speaking to them and I'm just looking around the room like, holy shit, like I'm getting old, these 20, 21 bright-eyed bushy-tailed kids that I'm explaining, what we do at work. And just like, man, I remember sitting in your chair and I don't know, I couldn't imagine how quickly the first 18 years have gone by and how much I've learned and things like that. And, one of the questions I got asked was, again, people are obsessed with titles and money and compensation. I get those things, right? And somebody's just like, man, how did you get to director? How did you get to vice president? How do you get to vice president? How do you get to the C-suite? That's where I want to be. How do I get there the fastest? How do I do that? And it's kind of cool, right? It's kind of cool having a title and, kind of an acknowledgement of your expertise and your hard work, I think, for the most part. But I don't know how to think about titles. I've once left a company to go to another company for a better title. And I don't know how to think about that stuff because if you really want, you can give yourself a title. Titles don't, at the end of the day, what do titles really mean? Do they mean a lot? And so just kind of having some self-reflection on that. And, what would I say to 22-year-old Paul these days? Would I have done anything differently? I don't think so. I think I did pretty well. And I will say, I see some of these, I'm going to call them young kids, young whippersnappers that a couple years out of school, and just every once in a while you run into one that just, man, they've just got that drive. They've got this something in them. And you're just like, man, I'm going to teach. When I see that drive, when I see that motivation, when I see a certain skill, that gets me really excited. And I want to help those people get to where they're trying to go. And that's one of the things that excites me now. I have, certain projects and things that I work on that are interesting, but probably there's nothing today that gets me more excited than, seeing somebody that's just got a ton of potential and just helping them figure out how to tap into that. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but I don't know where I was going with that. So that's just a work tangent. Because, it wouldn't be me if I didn't throw in a little bit of a corporate speak in there, because that's just what I do. That's where it seems to be where I'm very comfortable talking in that space. All right, let's get to a couple questions. I've been seeing some interesting things out there lately, and I think I might have a take on one or two of those things. So let's see. All right, so the first one is, have you started and mastered a new hobby in your 30s? I'm about to be 35 and regretting all the time and energy, youth hormones, and brain power that I didn't utilize in learning a new skill or working on something that gives me fulfillment. The ideas of being into book reading, working out, and bodybuilding just to look better, playing guitar, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it goes into all this kind of stuff. So fellow 30 plus brothers, what's a hobby that you've started and gotten better at in your 30s, looking to be inspired by your stories? Hobbies. I think a couple things. I'd say I don't, obviously there's work, there's being a parent. Those aren't hobbies. Those are life necessities, things that have to happen. I would say most of my hobbies now tend to be revolved around something to do with finances or budgeting or setting myself and my family up for the future. Doesn't sound that exciting, right? It's like, I'm not a golfer, really. I'm not a fisherman. I don't have cool hobbies like that, I guess. What I do is, like, in the last couple years, I would say one of them would be learning how to assess stocks. That maybe that doesn't sound that interesting, but I find it fascinating. And there's something called technical analysis. And that is basically looking at charts, or basically how a stock performs over time, and trying to make sense of those and make some inferences or projections on where that stock could go. Is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? I remember I got so excited by the idea that, and it actually originally started because, you got these online influencers on there, and it started with one, he's called the stock market wolf, right? Just like the Wolf of Wall Street. And his whole thing was day trading. And I had never really heard or knew what I'd heard the term day trading, but I didn't really know what it was. And without getting like too deep into it, effectively what it is, it's kind of like legalized gambling, I'm going to say. It's very, very difficult to do. But basically it's watching charts and literally live as it's happening by the second, and trying to find these small moments in time when a stock is swinging either up really quickly or down really quickly. And these are not things that are happening over like even hours. Like, this is literally happening over minutes. Like, over a 7-minute period, you might be able to buy certain options that are like swinging, and you get in and you get out. And the margins, like the potential for profits, like insane. It's like you can make 100%, 300% your money. So like at the surface, it looks amazing. It's like, but then really, if you kind of put your reality glasses back on, it's like, does this sound too good to be true? Then it probably is. Now, apparently there are some people out there that know how to do that and actually make a living at doing it. I was getting up at, first I was on, again, YouTube, good old YouTube, and watching hours and hours and hours of videos trying to learn how to do this and unlocking these secrets, right? And just like, man, this is how I'm going to get rich real quick. And then getting up with this guy, would have a Zoom call at 6:30 every single morning. And he'd be on there with hundreds of other people like me. And we'd be watching a chart, SPY, right? Which is basically a index fund, ETF, S&P 500 type ETF, and just watching that thing. And just like, all right, like, hey, this thing's starting to move, and watch this indicator, and this is going to happen. And boom, get in. And then, get out. All right, who made money today? Ooh, 70% of people are in the green, right? And I don't know how true that is because people are just putting it in the comments, but it was fascinating. It was an adrenaline rush. Like, it was definitely something. I realized pretty quickly. I'm like, yeah, this isn't really, I mean, I'm sure, like I said, maybe some people can make money doing this. I don't know. It just seems a little too gimmicky, but there were certain aspects or fundamentals to it that I do carry on with me today. And I do still do some chart reading, and I do feel like I do have a better idea of when to get in, when it's a good time to buy something, when it might be a good time to sell something. So I feel like I really did learn a lot, and that's one hobby. Let's call that a hobby. That's kind of a hobby. I learned something new. All this stuff. Again, I said I wasn't going to talk about nesting again, but here I go. All this stuff around the house that I don't know how to do. Again, having to watch a lot of YouTube videos and try to figure that out. That takes time, like figuring all that stuff out. I do like it. It is interesting. I do like adding new skill sets when it comes to that. I said I'm not going to talk about it, but the point is, I think that's kind of a hobby, is learning how to do home improvement stuff. So I'm going to throw that on there as well. And another one, let's see. Talked about this a lot on the podcast, but Adrian getting really into baseball and just trying to learn more about how to coach baseball. How do you evaluate a swing? How do you know if there's something wrong in the swing? If there's something wrong in the swing, what are some exercises or drills that you can do to correct those things? If you're running a practice with 9 or 12 other kids, how do you use the time most efficiently? How do I put together an agenda? I'm making it sound like work again, but an agenda, right? Like, hey, minute by minute, how is this practice going to get run? And so that there's a lot, just so much that goes into that. I mean, I could sit there on my phone just watching a Major League Baseball player swing in slow motion, back and forth, just kind of like looking at the front leg and seeing what that does, looking at the back leg, what does that do? Looking at the elbows, looking at the head, the eyes, everything, right? Like you can watch everything. So man, I just like nerding out, I guess, over stuff like that. But I don't know. It's just all learning new skills. This podcast, learning everything associated with the technical, I mean, just audio. Like how do you set up the audio, the microphones, so much that goes into all that stuff too, right? There's a social media component that honestly, I started studying on that. I'm just like, I don't want to learn how to do like, this is just beyond me. It doesn't excite me. I don't like this part of it. And so that's one where I just decided, no, I'm going to have to work with somebody that knows what they're doing here. Cause I can't do this part. This is not for me. So I do have my limits, but those are the hobbies. Hobbies, I guess to summarize, my hobbies are educating myself, learning new skills in that way. Maybe I need to do something more. Maybe I need to get into like buying, becoming a collector. Like I have a friend that has a bunch of really cool signed baseballs or baseball cards. Like that sounds fun. That's what I used to do when I was younger, was just kind of hang out in my room and trade baseball cards, football cards. Used to write letters to professional athletes and send my cards in the mail and just say, hey, please sign this. I remember maybe of the 30 or so that I sent, I remember Jerry Rice sending me back a signed picture. I don't know what the hell happened to my card. I sent him an awesome card that I did not get back, but I did get a signed picture of his. So I used to do cool stuff like that, play video games, do all that sort of cool. So it doesn't sound that exciting. I find a lot of joy and excitement in learning new things. And so those are my hobbies. All right. This one's getting pretty heavy here, but it goes, how are you coping with the sudden realization that time is finite and we're running out of it? Title asks it, late 30s is a typical time to get, I don't understand what this guy said. How are you guys dealing with this? Okay, so questioning or managing your own mortality, I think is what we're talking about here. I don't give this one a ton of thought. Usually, I think why? Maybe I should. I think I'm pretty damn busy every day, and I don't really have time to think about, like I'm too busy in it. I'm too busy living, I guess, to think about that. Maybe I need to pause and take a step back, and I should be like, hey, what's going on? Am I doing the right thing here? I think I am, right? But I think, just taking a step back and time is finite. Yeah, that is true. I don't think about it. I don't know. As long as I feel like I'm living a life that's exciting, that, like I said, I'm contributing to the lives of my friends and family, that makes me pretty happy. That I don't know. I don't contemplate the other things. I do think in relation to other people, I do think about that, right? So, I mentioned my grandpa earlier, he was in his 90s, but, you start to think about, some aging family members and, think about that sort of thing. and how, how much time do these people have left? And I know, actually one of the reasons why we went on this trip, well, one was because it was kind of like, baby moon, right? Everyone says baby moon. That's the new thing now, right? That didn't exist like 20 years ago, but now it's baby moon. But one of the reasons why we actually did it was because my father-in-law is now he's in his 70s, just started in his 70s. And he, immigrated from Cuba. But before he came to the United States, he actually spent almost a year, I think, in Madrid or just outside of Madrid at a home for boys that, would take in other, Cuban kids, I guess. And I don't know the reason why before they had to go to the US. And so he hadn't been back there since he was 15. So figure, let's do some math on the fly. I'm not good at that. 55 years. And jokingly, I said to him, Hachi, we better go now because, there's a lot of cobblestone streets in Europe, and I'm not going to be pushing you in a wheelchair on cobblestone streets. So, and it's honestly all joking, like seriously straight joking. We had a good laugh about it because he's a very healthy and very physically capable person. But in reality, it's like, hey, look, still at ages where they can go have a good time. Obviously, there's a lot. The flights are brutal, right? You're talking about a 13-hour flight coming from the West Coast going all the way to Europe. So there is something to that. But just saying like, hey, I want you to be able to go on this, let's call it a pilgrimage back to the time that you spent there. Is I'm sure it had to have been a very formative time away from your family in a foreign place with people you don't know, preparing to go to the United States. And so that was part of it was, there is a finite amount of time on this earth and I want you to experience that. So let's go do that. And so we did. And that, and just, with a new baby coming, it's like, hey, look, the reality is we're not going to get back over the Atlantic Ocean in a couple years. So it was just kind of like this unique timing to do that. But I just, do think about that, in terms of my own parents, they're very, healthy people, for being in their late 60s. They're, I think, in very good health, both mentally and physically for the most part. And, I do see like, and how they're able to have the energy to interact with their grandkids and have like a really good time and, be just very present and really great. Right. And so like, just very fortunate that, they're young enough and, like I said, healthy, they have their health and able to do that. Every once in a while, it does cross my mind though, like, hey, there will come a time, as it will for everybody, that, either, things are going to start to slip, or physically it's not going to be the same. And, that will happen. And so every once in a while, those things do cross my mind. But for the most part, I am just trying to enjoy, what's happening here and now. And I don't know if that's the right way to do it. It's how I do it. I feel pretty good about it. But if you guys have any other suggestions or thoughts, I'm all ears. All right, let's wrap up with this one. So it says, what brutal advice should all younger generations know? Sometimes the most valuable lessons are the harshest ones. What's a piece of brutal, no BS advice you think every young generation needs to know? It could be from your own experience, something you learned the hard way, or just a tough truth no one talks about enough. Let's hear the cold, honest reality. Let's see. I would say, when you're growing up, your parents are looking out for you. They're helping you stay on the track in terms of education, what's right and wrong, what to do, what not to do. Like there's somebody kind of guiding you from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 and so on. And that's great. I think it's needed, but there does come a time where it's just kind of like, you got to start fending for yourself, making your own decisions, kind of making your own way. And I just think no one's going to look out for you, basically. I mean, they are in certain aspects, but like no one's going to look out for you. Like you kind of like, you got to you got to figure it out for yourself. The best way I can think about it, and again, always going back to the workspace, right? But, if you think you're going to be in a job and your boss or your company is just going to willingly promote you, give you promotions, give you huge pay bumps. There are those out there, right? That does exist, I think. But for the most part, you kind of have to be looking out for yourself and being your own best advocate. Because for the most part, people aren't going to hand you things. You're going to have to go get them for yourself. And I think what I see is a lot of people don't go out and get what they deserve. They kind of just settle for like, hey, this is good enough. and I'm not going to really push much more. And I just don't think everybody truly understands their own worth enough, that you're capable of a lot more. You can do a lot more things. I don't know. I don't see a lot of people looking out for themselves. Maybe they thinking somebody's going to look out for them, or, hey, if I just kind of grind and just do what I got to do, somebody's going to eventually take care of me. And like I said, sometimes that is true. Sometimes that does happen. But by and large, if you want what you really think you're worth, what you really want to go out and get, you have to go out and get it yourself. You've got to know your own worth. You've got to learn how to negotiate for yourself. You got to know how to look out for your interests, right? You want to be a team player. You want to be someone that can be managed, that's coachable. All those things absolutely are true. But if you really want to exceed, or at least even meet, if you just want to meet your potential, you kind of have to go out and get it. It's just not going to come to you. And maybe that's common sense. But like I said, I've just seen throughout my career that just doesn't usually work out that way. But if you do know how to stand up for yourself, if you know how to negotiate for yourself, if you know how to market yourself, really good things can happen, and you can get, what you deserve. And so, yeah, you just got to get out there. You just got to get out there and get it. That's it. You got to get out there and get it. For the most part, no one's going to hand it to you. Go out and get it. All right. That's it, guys. That's all I got for today. I really do appreciate you listening. I hope you guys have gotten something meaningful out of this. I enjoy it. If anything, it's just good self-reflection for me. I think it's conversations that I have in my head once in a while, but it's nice to kind of put it down on paper, so to speak, or in this case, out on the internet. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Let's ride. The Rockies ain't too far from here if we drive on.